Hi guys and girls, I'm Obsidian Ant and this is Elite Dangerous. Welcome back to my exploration series. This is episode 23 and right very early on in this particular leg of the journey I came across quite a valuable system. It had all manner of high metal content planets as you can see here, and I was even lucky enough to find a water world planet here. I was actually hoping that it might have been a Earth-like, but upon closer inspection it was pretty obviously going to be a water world, and we can have a look at that right now. Of course the debug camera is really starting to come into its own. It's making for some awesome footage and some awesome screenshots, and it really does allow us to get a really nice look at some of the planets here. So I was heading to the Cat Spore Nebula. As I mentioned previously, I'm going toward the galactic core via way of any nebula I can actually pass through, and this was the last jump from the outside the nebula right to the center. And this is always a really nice jump sequence, because you go from being right outside the nebula and seeing it as this small cluster, this small backdrop, into at the end of the jump it being completely surrounding you. And again, just look at this. What an awesome place to visit. So the Cat Spore Nebula itself is one of those very nice nebulas that have quite a good number of stars inside of it. And this is always good because it allows you a lot of vantage points from within the nebula. There are a few nebulas out there that have very few stars in them, and to be honest, you can't get any good view of them except from outside. So it's always nice to head toward one with a lot of stars, which is what this turned out to be. And of course the nebula itself looks dramatically different depending on where you position yourself in it. Some of the areas are very light, have very vivid colours, and you can move around to the other side of the nebula and find yourself completely enveloped in darkness, as the nebula occludes all of the background and essentially very black. So as you know by now, one of the things I'm always looking for are asteroid rings, because I absolutely love looking at the ring systems with a backdrop of a nebula. And I was quite fortunate that early on I found a gas giant with a nice ring system right up close to the sun. And the ones near the sun are always the best because obviously they give you some wonderful lighting. So here it is. And just look at how vivid the backdrop colours are here. The nebula itself is absolutely gorgeous. And of course I jumped into the nebula a little bit too fast and took another 1% hull damage. By no means a huge problem in and of itself, but over time these do keep adding up, and sooner or later I'm going to have to use my auto field repair units, although there are a few elements I can't repair, and some of those you can see are starting to get a little bit low. Not too bad, but considering I've got many tens of thousands of light years left on my journey, I don't really want to keep doing this. Now, the asteroid fields that I always prefer are, as I said, the ice ones, but even better are the ones with this white layer of mist around them, this dust layer, which is not always present in all of them. So it's quite rare to actually find one like this, especially inside a nebula. And you may be able to notice that the ice asteroids actually reflect the colours of the nebula as well. Not quite so much in this particular nebula, but often they do. And as I get close to some of these, especially the ones off to the right there, you can see them reflecting the reds and deep oranges of the Cat Spore Nebula itself. Just look at the gas giant in the back there. Very nice backdrop, and it makes me very excited for EVA. Being able to get out and have a walk on the asteroids would be very nice, wouldn't it? And actually I'm going to give you a little upcoming tip here. I've got a video being released very soon with me walking around on an asteroid via the Oculus Rift, so keep an eye out on that. It should be available pretty soon. That wasn't the only planet I looked at with a ring system. There were many others. This one was particularly stand out because just have a look at the nature of the rings here, especially the one right out at the edge. A lot of planets just have one or two rings. This one had a whole bunch of them, and it's actually possible to fly between them. It's actually rare for me to do full scans of an entire system, and I know that generally would make me a lot more money when I return back to the civilized space and sell the data at Universal Cartographics. But what I tend to look for are ones like this, and this is the planet we were just looking at a moment ago. This is a high metal content planet with rings around it. So usually I just look out for standout planets and scan only those ones. And here we are actually in the ring system itself. Makes a change to see a planet with a nice atmosphere with a ring around it rather than a gas giant, because for some reason typically it's gas giants that tend to have the ring systems, and maybe that is due to the greater gravitational pull they have around on them, meaning that there's more potential for a moon to enter the Roche limit. But then I don't know a whole lot about astronomy, so I might be a little bit wrong there. So some say, with a fair degree of accuracy I guess, that the planets do tend to repeat themselves a little bit in Elite. Once you've seen maybe 10 or 20 of them, it could be argued that you've seen them all. But my answer to that is that for me it's all about the combination of planets along with their surrounding elements, such as what does the galactic core look like in conjunction with the planet? Does it have a ring system? Is it in a nebula? What sort of atmosphere does it have? And when you start combining these elements, you're going to start finding very unique locations, areas that when you look back at the screenshots you may have taken or footage someone else has taken, you'll say, yes, I know that area, I've been somewhere there that looks very similar. Or you could even say that you've been there specifically, simply based on the combination of how the moon might be orbiting the planet when it's got a particular ring system and the style of nebula that's around it. So for me, as I've mentioned many times before, this really is what exploration is all about. It's all about looking for areas that are unique, that really stand out and that are visually appealing. Of course, that is just my take on exploration, and that's what I see value in. It's what I really do enjoy about the game. Now, I found this system particularly interesting. What stood out for me were the stars themselves. You've got the central star there, of course, and then a number of others. And look at that, a star with a ring system. And right out on the edge here, what looks like might well be a water world with a ring system. So this is exactly the sort of thing I look out for. It by no means has a lot of value, but what it does have is a lot of visually appealing areas. And just before I closed the map there, you may have noticed there were two lava planets also with ring systems. There's a planet very much like that I visited in my first nebula way back when I went to the Pleiades Nebula for the first time. I was hoping that this planet would be very much like that. Of course, it's the second planet from the Sun, not the first, so the proximity to the star isn't quite as close as I would like, but hopefully it's close enough to give the sort of lighting that I am looking for. As we approach the planet here, we can see just how harsh the lighting is. Just look at the stark relief of the shadow on the back side of the planet there, not to mention how bright the front edge of the planet is, the edge closest to the star. Now I'm hoping as I get into the ring system here, we're going to get some pretty interesting lighting effects, and we should do due to the brightness there. Just look at it. Again, it's very similar to that system in the Pleiades Nebula. So we're nearly there, and hopefully I don't go too fast this time. I don't want to take any more damage on my hull than I actually have to. I'm already 3% down and only about 7,000 or 6,000 or so light years into my trip, and I've got many tens of thousands light years to go I'm going to go right into the galactic core, right to the centre at Sagittarius A. I'll then be flying up above the galactic core so I can look down on the galaxy itself, and I'll then be going over the opposite side of the galaxy before I circle back around to home. So it should be many tens of thousands of light years on this trip, but that of course is dependent on me not making any daft mistakes and doing too much damage to my ship. Now you can see the sun is indeed quite bright here. We've got that lovely white layer of mist here, the white layer of dust that I actually like seeing. And of course the asteroids themselves all look pretty dark because obviously we are on the shadow side of them. As I get down into the ring system itself, that lighting should really come into its own and really start making it look like a wonderful area. I still haven't found too many planets like this up very, very close to the star. That's something I always look for, but it's very, very difficult to find. But nonetheless, some nice light in there. Now just imagine what that would look like with a star of that same type of brightness, but up very, very close. Now we did see early on there was a star in this system that has its own ring system, but it didn't look as though that star actually had the sort of brightness that this one has. But nevertheless, it's going to be worth going to take a look at. So that was the lava planet, which turned out to be a high metal content planet. I'm going to skip the next one here, although it does have 2 rings, so it might be a little bit interesting, but really it's just going to be a little bit more of the same of what we've just seen. And what I'm looking for is a ring system that's very, very close to a bright star. But you can see this star is not all that bright, certainly nowhere near as bright as the central star. And this one of course is just the same, it's not all that bright, but it does have its own ring system, so it warrants a visit, that's for sure. We'll head out that way. But what I really want to see is a ring system like this around an extremely bright star. Yet to find anything quite like that. I did find one a few episodes back, a yellow-orange star that had its own ring system, but the ring system itself was too close to the star. You couldn't actually get in there without being forced out of supercruise, so essentially there was no way to approach it. But nonetheless, we're going to go to this one now and have a look. Without doubt this episode is focusing on ring systems, it would seem. It's a little bit different to the discovery elements I normally put in, but it's nice to have a little bit of a different perspective now and then. We're out here anyway, so why not? And there we go. A bright star, or brightish it would seem, with its very own ring system. Some slight problems with how it's been represented there. Obviously it's got a shadow and it shouldn't have that. That shadow is being cast by the central star of the system. Unfortunately at the moment Elite can only draw shadows from one light source while you're in supercruise. Now as I said, this star isn't really as bright as I would like, but if it was truly as bright as some of the other stars, when we get into this ring systems we should see truly black asteroids when we're facing toward the star itself, and when we're facing away from the star the asteroid should be really well illuminated. So yeah, things look a little bit odd here. They're not quite how they should look, or are they? We've actually got the main system star behind us, which of course would be lighting up the side of the asteroids we're actually looking at now. But the other side of the asteroids probably shouldn't be in shadow, should they? But nevertheless, this is quite an interesting sight. Its very own ring system. So this is something I've been looking at for should I say, for a very long time. Still not quite the effect I actually want to see. I want to see a bright star, and preferably with ice asteroids, although I doubt ice asteroids would survive being in this proximity to a star, would they? So rock is good. It's got the dust layers. Look at the lovely brown dust. Now Quite a few systems have the asteroid belts, don't they? The belts that you can go in and mine. What I would actually like to see at some point is asteroid belts looking a little bit like this. A massive ring right around the orbit line that the asteroid belt occupies. So that star wasn't the only point of interest in this particular system. There is a water world right out on the edge, and that also had its own ring system. Again, one of the first I found around a water world. Still looking hopefully for an Earth-like that has this at some point, but again, that's not yet. Nevertheless, water worlds are very valuable, so always scan them if you get a chance. Without a doubt, this is what I've been looking for right from the start of my deep fascination with games in the space genre. The ability to explore the vast unknown right out here in the vast depths of space. Not merely separated from the nearest port of civilization by miles, but separated by the seemingly incomprehensible distance of thousands of light years. And of course, that translates extremely well to Elite, because it takes significant time to get out here to these places. You're not separated from other players just by a loading screen. You're separated from them by hours, in some cases days. And that is space. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys and girls next time. This has been Obsidian Ant, signing off.